Hey everyone, I'm Lisa Jadan, and welcome to MenoPositive,
I got a good feeling.
where we take a refreshingly positive approach to navigating menopause. If you're looking for practical tips, expert advice, and honest conversations, think of this as your personal pick and mix for how to optimize your body. Although we can't prevent menopause, we can redefine it. And that journey starts now. I was out for lunch with a male friend the other day, and he delighted in telling me that menopause was the hot topic being discussed at every dinner party. Even the men are talking about it, he said. It got me thinking about the gender gap. You know, the way men and women are treated differently in society, culture, politics. Most of us are familiar with the gender pay gap. Decades of research showing that women, on average, earn less than men for the same work. Then there's the gender pain gap. Less talked about, but just as troubling. This is when women's pain is minimized or misdiagnosed in medical settings. Studies show that women wait longer for pain relief in emergency rooms and are dismissed and told their pain is quote unquote normal or they're exaggerating. But have you heard of the gender pleasure gap? Why is it that we speak so freely, even proudly, about men having active, fulfilling sex lives well into their 60s, 70s, even 80s, while women's pleasure is either invisible or like it expires? We've been conditioned to believe that desire fades, that our changing bodies make us less deserving of intimacy or ecstasy. But here's the truth. Pleasure doesn't have an expiry date. It evolves. And just like our careers, our relationships, our identities, our sexual selves can deepen, expand, and transform during the menopause transition. Now, there's lots of reasons why you might not want to have sex during perimenopause and menopause. So let me ask you this. If you have a partner, do you feel less attracted to them? Or maybe you feel less attractive yourself? Has sex become boring? Or maybe you've noticed a drop in your libido? Or maybe sex is really painful? Or maybe you are just stressed and too exhausted to make time to connect with your partner. If any of this resonates, let me tell you, it's normal. The decrease in estrogen during perimenopause is at the root of all this evil. And although frustrating, this does not mean the end of your sex life. If you want to enjoy all the pleasure that is available to you in your body, either alone or with a partner, it is all still there. So if you feel like you're too old or too tired or too busy or just too unsure on how to reconnect with your sensual self, this episode is for you. Because today, we're talking to Chloe Macintosh, intimacy and relationship coach and sex educator. After a career in architecture at the prestigious Norman Foster firm, she then went on to co-found Made.com, followed by a stint at Soho House Group as chief creative officer. She is now channeling her energy into pleasure education. She is the founder and CEO of the sexual wellness app Kama, which has been featured in Forbes, Vogue, The Times. Kama helps us reimagine how we relate to sex, pleasure, and intimacy. All of them essential pillars of our well-being and happiness. In a culture that often shames desire and sexuality, Chloe is breaking taboos and introducing us to practices that can transform our relationships with ourselves and with others. Chloe, welcome to MenoPositive.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Wow, what a insightful introduction into the topic. I loved
Oh,
it.
I am so excited to talk to you today. I mean, sex, menopause, let's break some taboos. Sexual wellness, I just want to talk about this overall as a topic because it's not just one of the biggest sectors in the current kind of health market. It's also almost been rebranded. It's now part of holistic self-care. What has been the driver behind this shift from understanding just the mechanics of sex to the psychological impacts of sex and intimacy?
Sure. That's the journey I went on to find the answer, primarily to how can I get out of my head? How can I feel healthier as I'm going through a burnout, a very stressful time in my life, being a mother, but also going through, the growth of a business. When I created Med.com, it grew fast. It was a lot of things I had never done before. I was doing a lot of things for the first time. So you exhaust a lot of energy, and then we don't resource very well, right? In the culture I grew up in, there's a sense that pushing through doors and fighting and struggling through things is how you really develop and how you really grow. And if you don't struggle in some ways, you're not really changing. Therefore, maybe you're not really growing, right? And I think in many ways that is true. We need to struggle. We need to both struggle physically so the body can be pushed out of its comfort zone and not fall asleep. We need to push ourselves intellectually to open our mind, to expand, to continue to change our mind as often as we possibly can. And of course, we need to do this also on an emotional level. We need to get out of the wounds that is our predicament into this world and how we didn't get this and how some parent did that. And then come the other side and remember, who we are and that it is through reconnecting that we can fully actualize. So my journey was I had a burnout. I realized that this burnout was very much a cerebral pain that was having an effect in my body. And I had run out of resources to supply myself with solution, which I had been very good at for a long, long time. Often I find entrepreneurs are relatively resilient people, right? So they naturally have a tendency not to ask for help and to burn at some point in the process. And as I was looking for ways to extract myself from that situation, but also starting to think, okay, what am I going to do about rebooting myself, resetting myself, nourishing myself, getting myself out of that place? I came across, of course, mindfulness, another trend, mental well-being. If you think about well-being, the evolution of well-being as an industry, as a way for us to commercialize it, because that's how we intend to evolve sometimes. We first connect with the product and maybe eventually we realize it's a habit that needs to change. But initially, the product is a strong way for us to adopt the change. And so we went from physical well-being, being aware of diet and physical health. Then we went into mental well-being, which was this resurgence of some of the ancient traditions, which were, meditation, mindfulness, introspection, this idea that a big part of living is to observe what's happening and not to be the action, but to be able to start building a space between who I am acting as, what's my persona that I'm currently expressing in the world, but remembering that a lot of our behavior is unconscious. And so building that space of observation, I knew this was a key for me to get better, that I was too much in it. I couldn't get out of my head. And meditation came as a real challenge for me. The meditation that we have seen to come back through, let's say, meditation apps. I really struggle with this idea of sitting still, cross-legged, not very comfortable for those the hips a bit jammed from sitting on chairs for a long time, and then kind of not thinking. By focusing on my breath, I thought, I can't do this. It's very, very challenging. And I went eventually to a clinic in Spain, which introduced me to another form of mindfulness, which was called sensorial mindfulness. And this was the idea that through our senses, through connecting to our senses, we are bridging the relationship between the inner and the outer world. And actually, the senses is how we create our own reality, how we translate what's outside into a feeling, a sensation, maybe an emotion. And that most of us are desensitized because of the lifestyle that we lead, and that we are no longer capturing information through our senses. We're mostly intellectualizing things in our head, and that separates us. And the pain of separation is the source of all pain. At the core of our suffering is something is separating. And so this method really worked with me. I was like, oh, I can be present if I touch my arm. Oh, I can be present if I chew on some delicious fruit. Oh, I can be present when I'm really smelling with my whole body. And I can be present with pleasure, because pleasure is a brilliant focus point. When we feel pleasure, we want to stay there. And in a way, for me, this was this idea that yes, ancient wisdom is valuable and we can take something from it, but sometimes certain ancient practices are just not suitable for the need and the time we're in, which is very different from the kind of introspection that people needed, a long time ago. And that I felt that this approach through the senses was a way to actualize mindfulness in something that people are more likely to pick up on and to feel connected to. And it is also easier. And of course, that's when I realize, yes, but now we're talking about pleasure.
It's
And
really, I'm just going to pause for 1 second because there was so much in there. I loved what you were talking about from burnout. I think many people can react to that, even if you're a busy parent or if you're a busy professional. But this idea of how we refill our bucket, that we don't spend enough time on refueling, I think that's a really interesting concept. And then even, your story about mindfulness, because you run into so many people who go, oh, I can't do that. Oh, no, I've tried that. It doesn't work. But that was really interesting that you didn't give up on it. You're like, I'm going to just find other ways to try to connect. It's such a lovely message to people to not give up on this, I guess, journey to try to connect more with your inner self or like your body versus always staying in your head.
yeah, the first step is I think for me, was to realize that my life's practice is presence. Everything else will happen. All the things you mentioned, they will happen as a consequence of my ability to be present with what is. And people come at this from many places. People play music. Some people write poetry. Some people use movement. Some people use breath work. Whatever makes you present is your winning practice. It's the one you will do, is the one you enjoy. It's again, sometimes ancient practices can be really regimented and tough. You have to sit in this position for 2 hours and do breathing. And it's such a commitment that a lot of people can't pick it up. And the mission for me was to really try to bring change at scale. And I wanted something that was valuable, for, as you say, because we are in our head. So this idea of resensitizing as a primary way to practice connection, to practice presence. I'm resensitizing. I become more sensitive, not less sensitive, more sensitive to my environment.
Yeah, because how many times a day do we really connect with our body? We do stay in our head so much, don't we?
Well, I mean, of course, I have an answer for then, and I have an answer for now. I have really repatterned my behaviors so that I'm always in my body. When I'm talking to you now, I connect to the point of gravity, the point of touch between the body and what you're sitting on. Gravity is a great point of focus. It brings you into your body at any time while you're talking, doing anything. You can always feel, what am I touching, right? So that's the first one. I may be aware that there's a slight breeze on my hair. So instead of not noticing, I'm noticing and I can do all this while talking. Actually, the fact that I'm doing all this while talking means that I'm not thinking about what I'm saying. I'm just connecting to what I feel, and I'm trying to connect to you and really answer you from the place of what's true for me, and not trying to get a message across or construct an argument. I really want to have a conversation that comes from not what I know, but what I respond to because of the practice and the knowledge, that
Yeah,
I have.
that's really interesting because I know when you talk about doing your retreats, or when you're working with people, you don't go in necessarily with a set plan. You kind of look at what the needs are in the group and respond to what's going on in the group or in
Yes.
the space.
Yeah. So this is this idea that in the present moment and only in the present moment is where we truly are and truly live. No one has been to the past and no one has been to the future, as far as I know, right? So we live in this present moment. And in the present moment exist all the possibilities. That's the idea of quantum physics. If in this present moment, everything is possible. So for me, as a practitioner, most of my preparation to a retreat or working bespoke with a client is to forget everything I know. It's very important. And to be able to be as present as I can in the moment so that whatever needs to happen can really organically take place through an intuitive process of conversation that in my work goes through the body. The body holds the memories, the tension, uh, it has so much information that is not somewhat diluted or corrupted by the mind trying to make sense of it. In the body, there's no sense. It's just something is stuck, something is blocked, something isn't moving. And so by tuning in, I get the body to show me where these things are. And with the energetic kind of block comes an emotional aspect. I get to understand what created this too. So if I was preparing for it, I would miss the whole point that in the present only is the answer if we can be there and have the safety to hold it. That's the most important part of what I do is that I'm safe in my own body. So I can hold other people in safety so the nervous system can release because otherwise it doesn't.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I want to go back to this idea of how to restore yourself. And let's connect this to pleasure now as where you came from. So you talk about conscious pleasure as a daily routine, and maybe this is a way that you can consistently refill your bucket. I don't know. But I think it's a really interesting concept of being conscious of the pleasure that you want to have in the day. So what does that look like in real life? And why, and I guess we've kind of answered it, but why is it so powerful to have conscious pleasure?
Mhm. So one of the first things that notion, because and the start of the process is a mindset change. There are a lot of concepts which are eroded and actually damaging in the story we hear or experience around sexuality. So a big part of the initial aspect of around pleasure is the deconditioning and taking off the shame. Because if you don't think you deserve it, you're not going to go. I can give you as many practices I want. It's not going to stick. So initially, there's this idea that pleasure is something other people give us, and that if we can find the right person, we can experience this great pleasure. And that is linked to a materialistic concept of the world where what we need is outside of us, and therefore the more we acquire all these things, the more we should be happy, which obviously isn't working, right? So the first realization is a pleasure is something you create and it's something you generate. So as you say, if you practice pleasure, you fill your pleasure tank. It's much easier for you to go into intimacy, to go into connection because you are maintaining your pleasure source. And this is also, maybe we'll talk about it later, connected to your relationship to your heart and what is love in for you and how you express it, experience it. Because pleasure is about surrendering, and surrendering is about safety, and safety is about the heart wanting to open, right? So they very connected on some level, and sometimes, yes, we can have physical pleasure that's just about physical pleasure, and that's great. But when it's a pleasure that we are really connecting with emotionally, there's also a different type of nourishment and healing that can happen with
And
that
give
kind of
us an
pleasure.
example of those different types of pleasures, because it could be as simple as a cup of coffee, right? Like sitting and really savoring and tasting
Yeah.
coffee.
Yeah, so there's three levels. One is reconnecting with your desire and starting to ask yourself, what is it that you want to experience? And for me, this is my morning practice. I wake up, I give myself a hug. We know through a lot of research that the body doesn't know who's giving the hug as long as it gets getting the hug, right? So it's secreting the same hormones. If you are, really holding yourself, I kiss my shoulders, I say hi, in terms of my body. And then I connect with myself and I ask, what is it that I want to experience today? And I'm thinking about sensorial things. So I'm lucky I live in Ibiza. So if I want to swim in the sea, I can do that. So of course, the closer you are to nature, the more you can have those sensorial experience. So the first is to connect with what do I want to feel? What would feel good to receive today as a sensation, mostly? So not intellectual thing, mostly sensorial things. Do I want to drink this? Do I want to prepare something? Do I want to hug someone? Do I want to be in nature? Whatever it might be. One or two things, small things. The smaller, the better in some ways. And then during the day, make sure that you are giving yourself those things. And when you do give yourself those things, be fully present with it. Even if it was like a red fruit smoothie, just really, really take this moment of you giving yourself what you really want as a sign of, re-empowering yourself of your desires and showing yourself a new pathway into I can have what I desire and I can give that to me rather than it's outside of me.
I love this idea that it is not dependent on another person
Hmm.
necessarily.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. Because as I said, a source of pleasure is also life force. And it's a fire that's inside of you. It's nothing to do with other people. We all generate that energy. It's just that our lifestyle and concept of society has shut down that power in us. We've suffered quite a lot of repression in a way of expression as individual. And that means that we're not nurturing this fire. So a lot of people don't realize that pleasure comes from within. All they've experienced is someone giving them something that they find pleasurable, right? So there's definitely a huge empowerment that comes with reclaiming that pleasure is something you have, that you can create, that you can nourish you with through these small practices. Another practice would be to actually think of self pleasure as much more than masturbation and much more how and where do I like to be touched? Where does it feel nice to be touched? And to use boredom or moment where there's not very much happening, which is difficult. So sometimes we have to create those now to actually start to value these moments where you are connected to your body as almost unnegotiable with yourself because they are the balancing antidote to what will happen by default, which is that we're going to be in our head.
Yeah, and
And
it's like if
that's
you're gonna make time for exercise or if you're making time for that girl's lunch or you're making time, you can make time for yourself or
exactly.
try to find that time. And you talked about, well, you touched on genitals and what I touched on genitals, what I hate a lot. But what I do love about your work is that sex isn't just about the genitals. It is about this whole body. And especially if you are with a partner and if you are struggling right now with penetrative sex, I find this concept really interesting that it doesn't always have to be about the genitals when you're being intimate with somebody. And in fact, it doesn't even have to be with your partner. You know, you talk about finding intimacy with friends and other people even doing this. So talk around that a bit more.
Wow, that's a big topic. So on the intimacy, what I have found in my work is that very often people come to me around a sexual question because that's kind of what I decided to put out as the way that I express what I do for various reasons. So initially, it's a sexual question that comes to me. But then quite quickly, I realize it's not about sex. It's often about intimacy and intimacy that is non sexual. And actually, it's the space that has been the most collapsed in our experience is that we start with a lot of conversation, maybe a lot of text being exchanged and an intellectual maybe experience. And then we go into kissing, and then it's very quick to be in a sexual intimate space. While what I found is the most healing, regenerative, necessary aspect of intimacy is the non-sexual intimacy, is all the ways that you and I can be close, physically close, present for each other, deep listening, being able to even touch and comfort and communicate through transmission of emotion. I want you to feel safe around me. I'm going to show you with my body what that means so that you really feel it and the nervous system can go there. Or I want to make you feel strong about yourself. I will do something different, in a sense that we have such a limited communication model these days, and it's mostly words. And we left brain, very much. And then everything around intimacy and sensuality and pleasure is a right brain function. And we need to really start to create balance between between these two aspects. And so the reason that people come to me very often is that the sex is not intimate or connected enough, or they get bored. And they can get bored because they don't have enough pleasure. They can get bored because it's not the sex they want. And that's something we can talk about in a cycle, that you really specialize in this transition between what I call the first and the second cycle. So I don't call it the menopause. I can't relate to a lot of the ways that this is being discussed. So that's something. And this is the kind of pleasure that is designed to make you feel good from the inside. It's the type of pleasure where you feel connected to yourself and you're able to have interoceptive awareness, where you can actually feel how the outside world is penetrating you and nourishing you, and how you can generate this pleasure through doing your own practice and then using that energy not for sexual purpose, not to have that interaction, but to be in a state of pleasure, because that's very, very healthy, and to create space where pleasure is explored with no intent to go sexual. And very often with couple, the practice that I give them to help them with their sexual intimacy is to build a ritual where every day, if they can, they spend an evening hour together and they give each other pleasure of any form. Even relaxation is a form of pleasure based on what the person wants to receive. And they do it one at a time. So for 20 minutes, you lie down and you tell me, I would love to get a neck massage and some relaxation. And then you as a partner go into your creative self to, attend to them, listen to their body, learn their body, and then you swap. And in that practice, there is an experience of receiving something without having to return it. And very often, when sex becomes more, functional in its structure, there is this sense that things have to happen in a particular order. We have to be hard the whole way through. We have to not stop. We don't know if we should say, "Oh, there is pain there," or just let it pass. We struggle to communicate once we are in that dynamic. So this creates an opportunity to be much more honest with, "Oh, no, not here," and for the partner to experience being told not here, which is not rejection, which is not you've done anything wrong, which is just I'm communicating with you so you learn me better. And that's again hard to learn in the sexual act. It's easier to learn this outside of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're saying there, because I think also during this second cycle of as women are transitioning just from the hormone shifts that are happening in their body, I think there can be a lot of blockers for women. So, I think for everyone listening as well, when you're ovulating, that's when our sexual desire usually, so we get more aroused during that time. So as estrogen declines, that kind of goes down. Testosterone are the things that help us think sexy thoughts, and that is kind of like a bit of a dimmer switch. It kind of starts going down a little bit. It can all be restored. But one of the things I want to go through a few of the blockers that women maybe face, because I know you have a number of exercises or thoughts about them. So, one of the issues is physical changes. What are the ways that women can connect or reconnect with their body? Because they may be going through some physical changes during this
Mhm.
period.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, I think it's something that women experience their whole life, actually. Because we're never quite happy with our body. For example, I was looking at pictures of me tidying up the house when I was in my mid 20s, and I was like, wow, what a great body. And then I thought, was I happy with my body then? Probably not quite. So I'm thinking, you see, there's no winning this game, because what's reflected at us is an idea of beauty that is just not realistic or desirable, so it makes it very challenging. So I think this is something women have to experience in their 20s in some form, in their 30s in some form, 40s. And now, as I turn 50, I am, yes, confronted to the aging process, which is a bit of a trap. Because aging is considered a problem in our society, yet we all gonna go through it. So why would we label it as a problem if we all gonna do it? So there's definitely something again there there's something to look at for sure. And so I think this second cycle is really an opportunity for us to actually look at pleasure as a practice for well-being, for rejuvenating, and it's in some way anti-aging, because once we allow ourselves pleasure, we prioritize what feels good over what looks good. And that's, again, it's a process to get there, right? So I'm not saying we're going to get there immediately, but knowing that you can have this, it's a lot,
And that's about
right?
being in your body again, not getting in your head. I mean, I was listening to another interview that you did, and the example was like, if women, we know some women will gain more weight around their midsection, so maybe their belly isn't what it used to look like. And if they're being intimate with their partner and they start rubbing their belly, then all of a sudden kind of shame comes in. Like, no, 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 I don't want to touch your body. And you move out of your head, out of your body and into your head again. I think that's quite common.
Yes, and as I say, me, I was somewhat always like this in my all my years. If someone touched my belly, I always felt, oh, someone is touching my belly, right? So I think the change is not age. Age is a trap. Nothing is about age. It's about where you are in your story with yourself and how much have you done to that point to accept rather than delay that this process is happening to you, right? So do you try to look younger by doing things? Again, for me, there is no judgment. I put breast implant in my late, early 40s, and I didn't know many things I know now. And so we all can learn along the way. There's not like a judgment around it. But of course, if we want to delay something that's going to happen anyway, at one point it's going to catch up with us. And then we may not have the tools to really deal with it when we need to. So the first thing is to reclaim that pleasure. You can give it to yourself and it comes from within. The second is to really work on the relationship to food. If that has been something in your life that's difficult, we have a very strange process whereby one of our primordial vital need, which is eating, is covered in negative emotions because of those standards that are not achievable. So we feel guilty before we eat, guilty while we eat, guilty after we eat, right? So we tell the body that this most essential nourishment that's supposed to save us from dying is actually a negative thing. So the paradox, the contrast built a trauma with the body. The body starts to be confused what the food is for. And that's, when the emotions and the relationship with food can have a play. So I feel that when you get older, you start to finally accept who you are. And there is an element of lifting that happens with this relationship with food, which may be a little bit more relaxed, a little bit healthier, because you've done the work and you've realized it's important to repair it. So I would say where we are with that relationship with food is important. And that's connected to how do we see our body. And that is about when you look at yourself in the mirror, do you have good thoughts or bad thoughts? If you look at yourself naked, you need to retrain to only have good thoughts. And you need to bring your eyes into all the places that you love about yourself and send that, wow, I love my shoulders, or I've got a beautiful, and that's a practice.
It's
That's
a
a
great
practice I
thing.
do.
It's what you would even say to your daughters, for people who have daughters or sons, right? Like you would always reframe things in the positive, especially around the body.
Yes, and for the places which are difficult for you to reconcile with, let's say after children, the belly is really a place that you feel difficult about it. Then the second practice is to go into meditation and to connect with that part of you and to send it love for just the fact that it's a part of your body. And if it's a value part of the body, let's say your legs, they allow you to travel the world, really come at it from a place of emotions, because the visual is going to be the harder part, and start to just love that part of the body through sending again appreciation for it. And that would be, I would say, the piece around editing the view of the body. The second practice I do is called contouring. And this is about retracing the outline of my body in the mirror to update my projection as to what my body should look like. Because we can't help to have a reference of the best body we've ever had. And we try to kind of forever go back to that. So letting go of that image of us and actually redesigning, seeing that the body is different. There's more bumps, there's more this, gravity is catching up, whatever it might be. And again, to do this is more of an exercise of editing a story, around what your body looks like.
So is that physically drawing it on a piece of paper,
No,
or just no, just
with your eyes,
oh,
you look at basically the difference between, the line of your body and all the way around. And you just memorize that this is your body.
what a simple exercise. And also probably get to accepting and loving your body more.
Everything you're going to do that's well intended to your body will be you're banking something. You're filling the tank for sure.
Now, another thing is pain. So 1 in 3 women experience pain during sex. And as we've been talking about, so much sexual interaction is usually related to penetration. But through Kama and through your work, you do a lot of work talking about different ways to be intimate and different things you can be doing with your partner. I also read it's all about foreplay. You, I love this idea. I think what I learned was when we're in perimenopause, stimulation or excitement can take a little bit longer, like longer for the blood flow to get to the different areas. You talk about, I thought this was fascinating. I was listening to you talk about what actually happens in our vulva and during foreplay and how that happens. Do you want to talk through that a little bit? So women even know just to say, babe, I need a little bit of extra foreplay, or we need to take this a bit slower.
Yeah, so I would say fundamentally, there are really 2 types of sexuality. There is a sexuality that is mostly programmed around the first cycle, which is reproductive sex. The sex has a function. It has to have those things to deliver what it's designed for. And then there is this second cycle types of sexuality where we're no longer trying to reproduce, right? So why are we still doing the same sex then? Because that is not the sex that's the most conducive to pleasure. It is programming men to feel a type of really quick reward type of pleasure through friction. And it works because of their design and the way that they really need to feel aroused and to get that out and to procreate, right? So their programming is very strong around this particular action. But for people that have a vulva, friction sex is only going to create pain and desensitization, especially when a lot of us, women and old people, I would think, struggle to communicate during sex, to say, okay, can we spend more time doing this? Oh yeah, if I say that, I'm boring, I'm not hot enough, I'm not in it enough, or I feel pain now, they're going to feel rejected, it's going to shut them down, they're going to lose their erection, so I can't say that, or all the things which we go through our head. But how can we, instead of get to a place where we are so far from each other that one person wants to finish and the other person is trying to get what they need,
Yeah.
then there is definitely an opportunity to, especially as we naturally, for maybe some of your audience, grow into this second part of our life. The reason that women think they have less desire for sex or that their libido goes down, and that we say happens during menopause. I also know a lot of women, and there is a lot of information that I connect with that says that this is actually an ascending time for women to connect to their true power. And that, yes, finally, the no responsibility and need to serve the purpose allows them to connect, maybe sometimes for the first time, to their true feminine energy, to the truth about just being a woman who's not a carrier for something, who, not serving something, and that transition is not represented in our story, which makes often men in their marriage very confused as to why things are changing in that phase of life, and women go slightly crazy and start becoming super wild, or because so there's a lot of things that happen, and I think often with the media, what's represented is the worst of the story. And it's not what I statistically collect a lot of data. I really ask people, and it's a little bit grassroots because it's my audience and the app, etc. But I find that the most important separation is from the conditioning, because then you can really get to know what is it that you want and who you are. And the second thing is in relation to pain specifically, what you were talking about is the fact that anatomically, we start with the same structure when we are in the womb. For the first 6 weeks, it looks like a vulva. And then as we develop into more of a male or more of a female, this structure separates into a penis or a vulva. And that, for me, was a very big moment of awareness for how can I understand how they are similar to help me understand how to come together into a type of sex that works with both of these different anatomy, which that fit within. But maybe this is not the way they just fit. Maybe there's another way that we can interact those things to create pleasure that is not just going in and out like we've seen. And the vulva and the vagina and even the uterus are it's called the CUV complex, clitoral urethral vaginal complex. And that means that we have a number of structure that are intertwined as part of our sexual organ. Obviously, most of it is internal, but it has a very intricate ways that it's designed to deliver a multitude of experience for women, and in particularly starting, let's say, with what's visible on the outside, which is the clitoris part, the part that has been a big focus for our pleasure for a long time, and various traditions and the anatomy telling us, but this is the opening of the story. It's the doorbell, to this internal experience. But in order to enter, something has to happen first on the outside for the next gate to open. And the next gate may be just the G spot, which is very close to the entrance. And we need to be there again for a while because that's the second gate. It generates lubrication, relaxation, and engorgement, which is when the blood rushes into the area like for an erection. But it's called engorgement because it's almost inflating all these structures like balloon. And these structures are made of erectile tissue. So as they fill with blood, they erect, they become more sensitive, more receptive, and also sometimes stronger to receive penetration. And that happens at a later stage of the process. So we've got the clitoral space, then we have more of the entrance of the vagina that has a lot of different structure. And then slowly through the walls of vagina, we then have the uterus, which is another big experience, a type of orgasm that transforms and creates such a release that it really is a form of healing itself, right? And so today it happens too fast, without preparation, with not enough arousal, and it's based on repetitive friction rather than relaxation, time, attention, and a dance of letting the body do what it knows best, which is to find the way this is supposed to work. And that means breathing consciously, slowing down, staying in presence, using the pelvic floor, really using the muscle of the pelvic floor to be part of the experience. A little bit, if you play tennis, you're not strapping your hand on the handle. You're using the hand to. So we have like a full system that has a capacity to drive the experience to help men last longer. If they push the pelvic floor, they realize, they can do something with it. For women, if they have pain and they push instead of tensing, they might find that that's actually releasing the pain. Or if they ask their partner to stop as soon as they have pain, not to go away, to stop in there and then breathe together, deep breathing into the belly together for 3 breaths, 4 breaths until the pain recedes, and then continue. And then, there's a bit of pain there, because the genitals also have a capacity to heal. Every body can heal another body through something. Your hands, your heart, your presence, massage, like we have that capacity to do it in many ways. And in sex, really, the genitals have this also sacred aspect that if we are bringing our spirituality, our true expression and self, and we are using sexuality as an energetic practice, things can really transform. And so it's a little bit also seeing a partner, not as our sexual partner only, but also as our healing partner. I mean, I know it's a bit of a funny one, but as someone who's there to help us heal as much as we can, or feel as good as we can, or co-regulate the nervous system as much as we can, because they are the person that we spend the most time with. So there is no negotiation around that person not giving us pain, not shocking us, not giving us triggers that we can't communicate. There needs to be an awareness that if you're going to be with a person, can you ask them to stop when you have pain? Can you tell them, let's do this later, I've had enough, without them feeling rejected? Which,
I love all this because I think it comes down to communication, like you said. And I agree with what you said earlier as well. I think this time in your life can bring a lot of sexual freedom because you're not people pleasing anymore. You're not there to procreate anymore. You're there for your own pleasure. My own experience has been around, it kind of started with pain, like, as the vaginal walls are thinning. And I think it's interesting for some women to know, because I think sometimes your experience shifts and changes, right? Like it flows. So it started with pain. And then I was like, I didn't want to have sex. And then it was because I didn't want it to hurt. And then, or it took more planning because you needed some other things to support you. And then I thought, okay, what are the other ways I can connect with my husband? So then I signed us up for a tantric sex class. It was really interesting. It didn't last very long, Chloe, because he thought that just meant let's have sex for longer.
yeah.
But there's way more to tantric sex than that, which is about how, the room's set up or your fears or, there's so much more to it. So that one didn't last very long. Now the pain has gone away. I've dealt with the pain and have had support there. And now I'm interested in expanding my sexuality, our intimacy. We've been married for 25 years. So it's, and still find each other very attractive. And how can we freshen it up a little bit? And this is what I've loved about meeting you and also being introduced to your app, because it's also talking about these things in a really lovely way. And maybe we can jump there right now in terms of the app, because it even just has introduced me to so many different things. Like, for example, some people spend a lot of time on, I don't know what you'd call like pre-care sex, like setting up the room, lighting a candle, what I'm going to wear. But there was a whole section even about aftercare. And, I've heard you talk about post-sex gratitude. And these are the small things. They're, you talk about imbalanced libido. I messaged my friend the other day because I said to her, I go, "Oh, I'm learning about suction sex right now." And she was like, "I'm Googling that right now."
Yeah, that's a good one.
But your videos are really digestible, easy to understand. They're not overly sexualized. They're really like, oh, here's just something you should know about that you can add in. Or if you're feeling this way, you normalize things. It's like asking what you have for breakfast. The conversation is very much this way. So can you tell us a little about, again, what brought you to create this, or what's your mission with Kama?
Yeah, the mission is to participate to the mission. I don't think it's my mission. It's not about me. I really want to contribute to shifting what is sexuality, and not just sexuality, because as I said, that was my entry point, thinking let's just go straight in it, because I'm French. I can talk about this. I don't find it awkward. I love to bring people together in a conversation, especially where it's not expected, and to speak about sex and for everyone to feel comfortable. There's nothing more satisfying for me, So I'm in the comfort pleasure business. I'm not here to provoke. And I work with pleasure. And so the first thing is the app was, how can I build a scalable product? I come from tech, and I have some ideas about why it can be a really beautiful way to get to people and change things, is to build something that people want to use. So the app was first, strategically, commercially, a beautiful way for me to put content somewhere that could scale. And the nature of the education comes from the fact that I educated myself quite late, and I speak this way, about things. So the content is about how I ask the question and the kind of answer that resonates with me, which often I'm quite similar to a lot of people who gravitate towards what I do, because I'm a bridge a little bit between that world where we don't get to know, where we're in our head, where we're driven and it's great. And we have lots of satisfaction around that too. And then a very obscure tantra, conscious sexuality, kink world where most people don't really relate to the tonalities and the vocabulary and its energies and this, and it feels a bit mishmash. And so I wanted to just find a practical way to speak about it the way we speak about everything else. So it's much more, the mission is for me is to bring sexuality back into everything, to reintegrate it because it's been pulled out, rather than treat it in a separate way, with only certain people being able to relate. It's important for me to feel that it's mainstream
Yeah,
in
and
a
it's
sense.
expansive. The conversation on Kama is expansive. It's not, like we said, it's not just about genitals. It's not just about penetrative sex. This whole concept of intimacy and enjoying pleasure, you introduce so many different ways to do that I think would really enrich so many people, so many couples, individuals. And it's not always about being with a partner either. It's about pleasuring yourself, or like you said, and that could even just be touching, never mind masturbation. So it just opened things up that I was ready to share it with everybody, and I have no problem talking about some of those things like over lunch, because like I said, suction sex is a funny name, because I was expecting something completely different than even what you described. So you knew how to grab my attention on the app, but it was so easy to look at, and I didn't feel any shame. It didn't make sex dirty or shameful, and everybody has their own relationship with sex. It really did feel like an education on how to enrich my life beyond just sexual intercourse.
Right.
And so congratulations on that.
Thank you. I truly appreciate. And when you were telling me the story about what happened to you with, the dryness and the fear of pain, and then you don't want to have sex. This is it. We think that our partner won't consider it sex until it's penetrative. But so much of the kind of sex you could have could heal you of that, could help you lubricate, help you regain more strength and vitality, because it's attended in a way that because it still wants to receive. It's becoming more delicate. There's things that are happening, but it still wants to receive. And this is really the biggest thing to change, I think, in the story is that sex is not penetration, sex is not the genitals. I mean, it's more the fact that it is all of it in equal parts, and that when we start to minimize it to something, we also reduce the potential for it to be satisfying. And this is what's happening. So for those who are going through this, the two pieces of advice which you highlighted is one, practice with yourself, start pelvic floor exercises. We have many on the app that helps you not just squeeze and do Kegels, which actually is going to likely to increase tension and restrict blood flow. And it's a good one if you have had a child and all this, but the importance with the pelvic floor is to work it in both directions. So both squeezing, relaxing, but also pushing and starting to get familiar with the fact that when you push, you're stretching, you're bringing blood flow to the area, you are helping the engorgement process. And so if you're lacking lubrication, bringing blood flow is a brilliant way to reoxygenate and rehydrate the area and relubricate. And then there is the potential to use a wand or an egg or something to work on it from the inside and start to massage the inside of the walls with a daily egg practice, maybe of 5 minutes, where I find this tool not revolutionary because it's been around for a long time, but so brilliant for this phase of life because you end up with a little internal massage tool. Forget about the crystal and the this and that. That story works for some, it doesn't work for anyone. But what's sure is when you go to the gym, you lift weights, this is just allowing the muscles of the vagina to start waking up to the fact that something is moving inside. And that also brings more lubrication. So on one hand, there is those practices. And then on the other hand, is this idea to redefine sexuality and sit with your partner and say, look, this kind of sex for me isn't going to work. How do you feel about exploring something different? Maybe you want to explore another type of pleasure. Maybe your partner wants to experience penetration. I mean, that's a bit of a wild one, but they want something, but do they want it? And starting to break the barrier while you are confronted with a problem, it can turn into an opportunity if you can communicate.
And that is very important. And I think it was really interesting. The first, one of the conversations I had with my partner was on your Instagram. I think it was called like 9 questions to ask your partner or something like that. And we did that one night. And I think one of the questions was like, what do you envision or what do you visualize when you're orgasming? Or what do I do that you don't like? What do you do that I really like? Or there were a number of questions. It was really harmless. It was lovely. We just did it and just did it. It was a conversation. It was literally just a conversation, but it was also a nice way to open things up that the next time we were intimate, there was more of what I wanted. There was more of what he wanted. And there could be little things like, when people say, I really like the lights on. It doesn't have to be anything bigger than that all the time. Or I like when you speak to me more. But even that conversation, those little steps. And so those were on your Instagram as well. So I thought those were really helpful. Now, Chloe, the final question that we ask all of our guests, knowing what we know now about sex, intimacy, and the menopause transition, or the second cycle, as you've put it, what would you tell our 35-year-old listener?
Definitely to make physical sensorial practice the most unnegotiable part of your day. Because my learning, with all the things that I've done and all the ways that I've looked at it, is that it's when I started to prioritize my body that everything changed. To truly prioritize what's good for my body. Because we talk a lot about self-love, right? We say the core of it is self-love. Now, self-love is another trap because how hard is that? Now, try to love your body instead. To do body love, not self-love. You do body love. You do the things that make your body feel good. Because the thing with self-love or love, it has to go in. And the going in is the practice you give yourself. The going in is the choice you make to serve yourself and what feels good to you as the priority. That's the love that then you can use to open your heart, to bring people in, to become less triggered, because you have that in. So that's why earlier I was talking about, yes, we need the energy in the belly. We need to reconnect with the desire. We need to feel comfortable with the fact that we have a sex drive. And that doesn't have to be sexual. It can be an experience with ourselves. And then we also need to find ways to keep our heart open because we are wounded. And then when something triggers us, we shut the heart very quickly and we struggle to keep our heart open in relationship. So betting the love in is actually the practice of opening the heart. So if you love your body, you do so much for yourself at relational level, at mental health level, and then at health level, for sure.
Did you hear that, everybody? That is a non-negotiable. I think that's advice for the 45 and 55-year-old listener as well, unless you have something different for those that you'd like to add.
I mean, I don't know what each, where everyone's at, I guess, because age, as I say, I don't identify to age anymore. But I would say another big lesson for me was that self-expression. If you find what you're good at, and for me, that means what's effortless, what I enjoy, and what has the most impact on people, then find this and build your life around it.
That is a beautiful idea to end on. Chloe, it has been so lovely to talk to you, really enlightening. I've really been enjoying exploring things on your app. And I'm not just plugging that, everybody. I really do mean just go check it out. I think you have a 7-day free trial on the app.
I'm going to give you a 50% discount for a year subscription.
Oh, wonderful.
If anyone wants to try it.
I will put that in the show notes. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being part of this MenoPositive community and for giving us permission to experience pleasure every day.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Now, if people want to find you, the best way is how?
Right. So on my Instagram, where everything kind of is centralized, it's at kama.lab. We are shadow banned, so sometimes it's difficult to find us. If you go to Google and click on the link, then you'll find us for sure. My personal one is Chloe_Macintosh, and the Kama app is on the App Store.
Wonderful. It will all be in the show notes. Thank you so much. Enjoy the sunshine in Ibiza, and I look forward to meeting you in person soon.
Same here.
Take care, Chloe.
Thank you.
Wow, this blew my mind. The idea of making your pleasure a priority. As women, we are constantly putting the needs of everyone else first. There's no energy left at the end of the day for us. One of my big takeaways is this idea of conscious pleasure. In a cuddle, a cup of coffee, finding moments to prioritize my pleasure, and then using it as a tool to regulate my emotions. I'd love to hear from you. Tell me how you will prioritize your pleasure this week. While some of the hormonal changes may change the way you are experiencing sex and your body, you have the right to enjoy all the pleasure that is available to you in your body. Either alone or with a partner, it's all still there for you during perimenopause and well after. But please know this, a meaningful sex life does not have to look a certain way. Exploring and learning about what feels pleasurable for you at this time in your life, it can be fun. And you get to decide what you want. Now, if men are happy to talk about menopause at a dinner party, they should be happy to connect with you about how your relationship may be changing. If you enjoyed my conversation with Chloe, or think someone you know would enjoy it too, I can think of a few. Do me a favor. Can you help me build this MenoPositive community by sharing, liking, and subscribing? It really does make a big difference. Thanks so much. See you next time. Oh, and by the way, I knew you were MenoPositive when you downloaded this episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love bringing this information to you, and I love that you're taking control of your health. You can follow MenoPositive on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast. Join me next week as we discover more ways to optimize our bodies. Because together, we're going to redefine menopause.
I got a good, good feeling.